Good evening and welcome to the Selectmen's Meeting for Tuesday, December 21st. At 7 o'clock, we'll have a joint meeting with the Water and Sewer Commissioners about the town manager's proposal for the merger of the Water and Sewer Department and the Highway Department. 8:30, we'll have a discussion on the liquor license regulations. 8:45, we'll speak about the town warrant discussion. And at 9 o'clock, we will enter into executive session for collective bargaining, personnel issues, and a strategy for real property negotiations. So, Larry, will you lead us in the pledge?
Pledge of allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and
to the republic which stands one nation
under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks. So do you gentlemen wanna come up?
Probably should call our meeting.
Yep.
Time is 7 o'clock. I call the Foxborough Board of Water, so this meeting to order.
I believe Mike will not be here tonight.
Okay. Kevin, do you wanna start us off with?
That's okay, with the board, I've got a presentation for you.
Yep, that's great.
Okay. I think you all have copies, I hope.
Right here.
So you can make notes. And there are extras for folks in the audience, I think.
It's changed a bit. I might have picked that earlier.
So, I guess the central question to start off is, make sure I'm talking through this thing, oops, is why do the DPW now? There's really 4 reasons. First, we're in a recession, as everybody's aware. That recession, reducing revenues that the town works with, demands that we do more innovative things to try to live with a declining revenue picture. Or, as the cliche goes, we have to learn how to do more with less because our revenues are not keeping pace with the increased cost of things. And we've got to figure out ways to get more work done, continue to deliver quality service to the public, and do it with fewer resources. So it requires us to be innovative. We have a fiscal 12 deficit of about $2 million. Now, that was 1.6 back about a month and a half ago, and Randy and I first briefed you. It's gotten a little bit worse because our revenue numbers have fallen off a little bit. The budgets have been submitted, so we put the budgets that have been submitted by the departments in, and that brought it up. Now, we'll be working to bring it back down, but I just wanted to give you the state of the condition as it exists tonight. And the current water superintendent, water sewer superintendent, Leo, is retiring, so that provides time for decision and potential opportunity. Current issues to resolve. First, water sewer road repair work is not coordinated right now. The result is a lot of money being wasted by early disruption of road surfaces. Now, this is a fairly simple matter, and I'll give you an example. Cross Street. Cost of the current project, around $1 million. Now, it's hard to break out any specific part of that whole PWED grant because it's been done in 3 major components, but the part that Cross Street is a piece of is probably around $1 million in cost. The life expectancy of that pavement, because it's full depth reconstruction, meaning they go all the way down and reprocess the gravel, should be 12 to 15 years. That's considered, generally speaking, the life of a resurfaced road. The water sewer lines under the road were not repaired. And the reason they weren't repaired was because there isn't a system in place that allows for good coordination between all departments. In this case, we've got 3 different departments, 2 that control road work, 1 that controls water sewer pipe replacement. Water sewer division does water sewer pipe replacement. Highway does road paving, and in this case, we had mitigation money coming through the planning board, a third set of revenues. And unfortunately, there wasn't, we don't have a system. I want to be very careful here, and I don't want to put blame on anyone, because frankly, that's not terribly important. And if we get into the blame game, we're not gonna get anywhere, because everybody will be doing this, and that's not gonna get us forward. So it doesn't matter how it happens, but our system of doing long-range road maintenance does not take into consideration simultaneously all of our infrastructure needs. So, now, will we need to repair that pipe? If we get real lucky, maybe not. However, it's far more likely, because it's a very old pipe, that we will have to fix it. 7, 8 years, maybe sooner. If we have to take that pipe up and fix it any time before the useful life of the road expires, then we will have deconstructed the road, opened it up, made a trench patch, compromised the integrity of the road long before we should have. In those years that we open that road up and we prematurely compromise the integrity of it is a cost to the taxpayers that we should not have borne. It should be the case that every time we're gonna do a full resurfacing of a road, that we first consider with Water Sewer Division, do we need to replace the water or the sewer lines underneath? They determine if we do, and then we do that work, and then we come back and resurface the road. Now what we've got is a reconstructed road with a 12 to 15-year life, a pipe underneath it. We can have reasonable assurance that it's gonna last for that period of time, and we're not gonna tear that road up early. So, easy example. So if that road ends up having to be replaced 5 to 8 years earlier, the net cost in inflated dollars will be far more than the $1 million that it costs us today. And that cost is early cost and avoidable. It's completely avoidable. And this isn't a singular event. This has happened on a number of occasions. Now, I have not cataloged how many times it's happened, because basically the only way to do that would have been to go back through all the water sewer projects and all the street projects for the last 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years, whatever the period is, and then compared them. So I did have a conversation today with Leo, with Bob, and with Randy, and what we determined was there were other examples. Now, is every road that we construct like this? No. I mean, I'm happy to say that some of the roads have been properly coordinated, and the work's gotten done the way we would all like to see it done. But we don't have a system that ensures that's going to happen every time. That's the problem. Additional issues. We've got 2 superintendents as we're currently configured. 2 superintendent positions managing 29.5 employees and in that 29.5, there are 5 middle managers. Each superintendent is a $100,000 employee. Now, I'm not going to get exactly specific, 104, 102, about 100,000. The general multiplier in the public sector is considered to be 30 to 40%, fringe benefit multiplier it's called. So that means an additional 30 to 40,000 in cost. So that puts the total cost for these 2 superintendents at $260,000 to $280,000. And that's managing the work of approximately 29 employees. By comparison, the police department has 1 chief and 36 employees. There is also a deputy and 4 sergeants, so there are 6 supervisors to 36. A better ratio, not hugely better, but a better ratio. The fire department has 1 chief and 35 employees, also has a deputy, also has 4 captains. So again, it's a 6 to 35 ratio. Now, the one thing I wanted to stress, ironically, even though I would make the argument that we can get by with only 1 DPW director and an engineer, the proposal I'm going to make, and that we don't need 2 superintendents, the manager to employee ratio in all 3 departments is exceptionally good, because it's about 4 to 1 if you do that math. 4 to 1 is considered terrific in the public sector. I've had communities where I work with a manager to worker ratio was 2 to 1, which was clearly excessive. 4 to 1 is pretty good. So we don't have a problem in that we have too many managers and too few workers being supervised, but we do have, I think, an opportunity here to make it even better. And even better is the way we got to be thinking these days. Snow plowing is another issue. Water sewer employees currently plow snow on a voluntary basis, meaning if they would like to take advantage of that, they kind of say, yep, I'd like to do it. It's not a requirement. Now, this leaves highway vehicles idle during storms. We have more vehicles in the highway department than we have drivers to staff them. Now, that's the normal condition, but that's exacerbated by the fact that at any given moment, you're going to have a certain number of employees in any department who are out sick, who are injured on duty. We have vacancies we don't fill, on vacations. There's a number of reasons an employee might be out. So if we had all of our employees available, we still wouldn't have enough in the highway department alone to field all those trucks. And as a practical matter, we're down at any given moment. For instance, right now, we have 2 employees out injured on duty on workman's comp. We have 1 vacancy that we haven't filled. 2 vacancies that we haven't filled and another vacancy pending. So we're down 5 people right now, just as a for instance. When we have vehicles in the highway department and no driver to put in them, we still have a tremendous amount of lane miles that we've got to plow, so we hire contract plows, which is what everybody does. Contract plows cost anywhere from $75 to $100+ an hour. The top of the scale is $115. That's for the big trucks. Town employee rate, $15 to $26 an hour. So, if we have an idle truck and we have an employee not available to put in that truck, A, we already own the truck. Yes, using it causes a little more depreciation, but it's a much smaller cost than if we put the employee at our lower hourly rate in that truck we already own, compared to hiring a truck at 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7 times the rate and pay that premium. How much does that cost us? I asked Bob to do an analysis, and that analysis is attached to the original memo I gave you. In fiscal '08, the winter of 2007 to 2008, we computed the number of storms we had times the number of vehicles that were vacant, compared that to the cost of the contract plows that we hired to replace those vehicles, and computed a $14,756 cost, which we could have avoided if we'd had water sewer employees in those trucks. In the winter of 2008 to 2009, because that was a much more severe winter, it wasn't a severe winter, it was just more severe than '08, the premium was $26,397. So for just 2 years, that's a $41,000 cost that we could easily have avoided. Consider, if we take those numbers and we extrapolate them out for 10 years, we're looking at a couple of $100,000. Now, that doesn't mean that every winter was the same as '08, '09, or '09, '10. But I will tell you that '08, '09 was a light winter comparatively. And so it is possible that the numbers are a little lower over a 10-year period or a little higher. However, the point I want to make here is we're dealing with big numbers. These are big numbers that the taxpayers are paying that we don't have to undergo this cost. Additional issue, clerical staff. We have 3 full-time folks in the water sewer office, 2.5 full-time equivalents in the highway. A typical staff for a DPW the size of ours, in a community the size of ours, might be 3 to 4 FTEs. That's typical in the survey that we conducted of other communities in the area. So I would say to you that we are probably staffed up fairly heavily. Part of the reason is the clerical staff are in 2 separate places. So things like answering the phones, handling foot traffic, people who come to the office needing help, we have to duplicate that level of service because we're in 2 separate places. Having them in one at least alleviates that amount of work. We don't have an automated switchboard here at Town Hall, as you know. We answer the phones instead of having electronic transfer to the office where the office staff would answer the phone itself. And the water sewer employees are terrific at helping out with that burden. In fact, I'm informed that they handle a large share of the burden. That work, coupled with the duplication of having them in 2 different places, leads me inescapably to the conclusion that we have a lot of work going on that we could avoid by combining the staffs. We also have some software which we're not utilizing as extensively yet as we can. The Munis water sewer, the Munis utility billing software is very powerful software. It's good stuff. But there's a pretty tough learning curve associated with it. And we need to train our folks a lot better. And if we do, I think we will make better use of technology and be able to reduce the reliance on people. Now, one point I want to make while I'm saying this, no part of the proposal says I'm proposing to lay people off. Goodness knows, there is enough challenge in this budget coming next year, without artificially introducing layoffs into the budget by doing this. But I do think that there's opportunities by attrition. Attrition being defined as two things: people who retire or leave for whatever reason not being replaced, or people who go to another department not being replaced. There's those opportunities. I wanted to say that right out loud, right here, with the board, with both boards, on camera, because I've said that to the staffs in both departments, and I wanted them to hear me reiterate it in a public forum, that is not part of the proposal. Very important. So what is the proposal? Those are all the issues that I've identified, and that's just been in the process of the ability or my role of trying to learn how we're structured and other opportunities that we might take advantage of, the normal learning curve of being in a new community. And I want to emphasize again, I'm not being critical of anyone. There are reasons why these practices have been in place for a long time. And I want to emphasize, these practices have been around a long time. And they're practices that have been followed by a number of people who've been in succession. And so I don't think it's productive, nor is it necessary to say this person or that person has made some mistake. Not helpful. What is helpful is to identify this opportunity that's here and take advantage of it. So here's the proposal. It's pretty simple. Combine the water sewer employees with the highway, park, and maintenance employees, and create a DPW, a modern state-of-the-art Department of Public Works. Eliminate both superintendent positions and replace it with a DPW director. Do it for a one-year trial basis. Make sure everybody's happy with it. Make sure that it performs up to the standard that I'm pretty confident it will, before we ask anyone to make it permanent with a charter change. We did a 16-town survey as part of our research on this to find out what are our neighboring communities doing. And I attached that chart to the original memo I gave to both boards. And what we found was that 14 of our neighbors, that's all the communities, that basically was a double ring around us, have a DPW. So it's clear that not having one is very much out of step. It's not the norm. And there's a reason for that, and that is because most folks have caught on to the fact that a DPW, consolidating all public works folks under one roof and one leadership, offers strategic advantages and volume discounts that are not available when we're separate. Plainville and Norton do not have a DPW, but their water sewer employees do plow snow. So the DPW is clearly the norm. What's at stake here is some substantial savings. First of all, eliminating one superintendent's salary is a savings of about $130,000. Now, it's actually turns out a little more, but again, I didn't want to split hairs. I'm trying to deal in round numbers here. Snow plowing, we figure, is somewhere between 25 to 35, and that's whether now you got to kind of say, well, is it a light year, a moderate year, a heavy year? If it was a light year, it would be probably more in the $15,000 range. If it was a heavy year, it could be $40,000 or $50,000. So I kind of put it in the middle. Clerical staff reduction on the basis of 1.5 positions eliminated. We might be able to do better. In fact, I'm very optimistic we could do better. But if we took the staff from 5.5 to 4, that's about an $80,000 savings. However, the most important savings is determination of unnecessary early pavement failure due to lack of capital project coordination. Because those dollars are in the hundreds of thousands or millions. One mistake of that nature, one mistake, one single road can cost the town several hundred thousand dollars. Multiple mistakes of that nature get up into the millions quickly. This is the key thing that causes me to make this proposal to you. Now, in addition, and it's kind of a sidebar, this does not have to be part of the proposal, but I think there's huge advantage. And that is use part of the savings to create a town engineer position. Why? There are a number of additional issues which the town engineer position could very effectively handle. First, the board has said to me that you want a state-of-the-art pavement management system prepared. We all want that, but the reality is right now you have a highway superintendent who has a great deal of responsibility, is doing a lot of work. He doesn't have the time, frankly, to do the work that's required to create that system. It's tremendously labor-intensive to go out because you have to survey every road and you have to determine what sections you want to do. You can do 50-foot sections, 100-foot sections. Beyond that, it's not effective. But you've literally got to go out and survey the pavement conditions of every road in town, every lane mile, so every road, that's 2 roads, north, south, east, west, in 50 or 100-foot sections. Huge amount of work. It won't get done. With the current configuration, it will not get done. The creation of an engineer position will allow it to get done, because this would be a person whose sole responsibility, primarily, would be to get this particular effort done. We don't have GIS, Graphic Information Systems Mapping. Now, I think the board, I know both boards know that, both boards have said repeatedly, we really need to have it. We are lagging seriously behind in the area of technology. Almost every community, even small communities, have GIS now. We have the capability to do it. In fact, I think we have it funded, but we don't have a person whose job it is, whose only focus in life is to get it done. So we've got lots of people who would love to have it done on the staff, but they've all got busy lives. Town engineer, you can task with that, because that's the person in most communities who champions the effort to get GIS done. Town engineer can act as a deputy DPW director during times of the director's absence, vacation, sickness, whatever, a big advantage. And here's something that I think is very interesting that I've had a brief discussion with the town planner about. Currently, when roads are being constructed in town, developers are building roads, be they commercial or residential, we typically contract out to a consulting engineer the inspection process. That's very expensive, both for the developer as well as for the town when we pick up the cost. Usually it's the developer, but occasionally for other reasons we pick it up. About 2 to 3 times what we'd pay our own staff engineer. But more importantly, a consulting engineer does not have the incentive to be quite as aggressive with ensuring the quality of the construction as the town engineer who works for the town and who is part of the department which is going to take that road over and maintain it for the next, gazillion years. So generally speaking, in communities where they have the DPW staff inspecting the roads, you get a much higher quality of inspection because they're frankly just a lot more aggressive in their requirements. It's a simple truism of human nature. And of course, a town engineer can design small and medium projects. We're not suggesting the town engineer would design a mile of new road or a water treatment plant, but if we're doing a small drainage work, a new cross culvert and some wing walls, easily within his abilities to do, survey a road, the right-of-way takings for a road construction job, certainly within his purview. So we can get a lot of that kind of work done. And that provides an opportunity for some additional savings beyond what I've already illustrated. Right now, we're carrying in a variety of town budgets consulting engineering monies. And I can go through those in a great deal of detail. But suffice to say, I think there's an opportunity to cut those budgets about $20,000. Now, at the time I wrote this Saturday morning, that's what I thought we could cut. In a meeting I had today with Leo, Bob, and Randy, we've identified the opportunity to cut probably much closer to $40,000 or $50,000 in engineering costs. And that's not eliminating those budgets, that's just reducing them and transferring that work to the engineer. Now, in my analysis, I also counted the DPW director as a $100,000 employee, when that individual is probably more like a $120,000 employee if you really want to, because since Saturday, we've done a little bit more research since the time of this writing. So there's about another 25,000 in savings, about another 20 odd in cost beyond what I've shown you here. It's about a wash. So it doesn't affect the numbers overall, but I did want to make you aware that there are some additional savings, a little more cost. We've been having discussions with Plainville. I talked to Joe Fernandez, my counterpart in Plainville, just yesterday. He's had several discussions with his selectmen. Nothing is yet approved, but they like the concept. Their highway superintendent is retiring just about the same time that Leo's retiring, later this year. And there's an opportunity to do some management sharing. Plainville is under the same kind of budgetary stress that we are. They would prefer not to go out and hire a $70,000 or $80,000 highway superintendent, their salary structure. And so they've asked, could we provide about 15 hours a week? We can do that with the two-tiered structure, with the DPW director and engineer. I would not suggest to you, if the engineer is not part of this proposal, that you try to loan 15, that you eliminate 2 superintendents, replace with the director, and then give 15 hours of his time to another town. That will not work. But if the two-tiered opportunity, director, engineer, is approved, then Plainville potentially would pay us as much as $30,000 for 15 hours of work. And so there's another, so of the engineer's salary, we can cover about $50,000 of it with non-town money, if you will, savings and money contributed. I can't tell you if that proposal would become permanent, but I can tell you that it gives us a couple of years to phase in this engineer concept at a reduced cost. So the summary. So we're looking at eliminating a superintendent position at a cost savings of $130,000, snow plowing savings of $25,000 to $30,000, clerical staff reduction of $80,000, engineering budget cut of $20,000, Plainville cost sharing of $30,000 for total savings of $285,000 to $290,000, less the town engineer of $120,000.
You need to change your slide.
Oh, thank you. Less the town engineer's salary of about $120,000. And actually, I flipped that. Should be the town engineer of about $100, DPW director of about $120, because director would be the boss. So I'll get that flipped, but it doesn't affect the number.
But your 120 includes the benefits, right?
Right. So that is a net savings of about $185. And again, this is being done at a great big level. It might turn out if we were to do this, that the savings was only $150, or the savings was $190. The thought I want to leave, the impression I want to leave is that the savings is very large scale, whatever the number is. And I've had lots of people calling and emailing and saying, well, you didn't get this quite right, you didn't get that quite right. I'm sure that there's things in here that are not perfect at this point. But I'm equally sure that the dollar savings that this truly does represent is at least $150,000 and maybe more. So it's a substantial savings no matter how you cut this mustard. And it doesn't include the potential for millions in road repair savings by a better coordinated program. Finally, having a coordinated 5-year street infrastructure plan, a real pavement management plan in place, a substantially stronger public works capability management, and potential future regionalization savings. And I just want to say a thank you to Bob Swanson, to Leo Potter, and to Randy. I will tell you that in the course of doing all this work in the last 3 or 4 weeks, I'm proud of the fact that the 4 of us haven't always agreed. In fact, I think it's probably fair to say that we don't yet completely agree. But I will also say that I was very impressed with the professional and collegial effort on the part of all 3 of these good, fine employees to fully vet these ideas and to be very cooperative and very open-minded in looking at them. And I think in the end, acknowledging that while we may differ on the specifics and the approach and still have lots of questions, I think we all agree that the savings potential is substantial. And finally, I want to say thank you to you folks. You know, it isn't always the case that leadership of a community is willing to listen about changing things, especially practices that have been in place for a long, long time. I know change is hard. I know it's politically not easy. And so when I bring an idea to you, and, you know, I'm the new wise guy from out of town, you know, what do I know? I know it's pretty tough for you to say, yeah, okay, we'll give that idea, you know, a listen. And I appreciate the fact that you've all kept an open mind and been willing to consider this. Whether you approve it or not, that's up to you. But I appreciate the fact that you've allowed us professionals to do our job and to present something to you, because that's not always universally the case, so thanks. And we're all here to answer any questions you have and help in any way as you have your discussion.
Okay, well, I thank you, Kevin, and Bob, Randy, Leo. And you have had meetings with the departments themselves, with all the employees.
I met with the men and women of both departments, about 3 hours, with the staffs of the guys from Water Sewer up at the pump stations. Leo was kind enough to, after I met with the guys, to take me around to show me all the facilities. Met with the clerical staff on a separate occasion. Went down to the DPW and met them this past Monday, Tuesday morning, whatever it was. Again for about 2 or 3 hours, and I met with the clerical staff. And I gotta say, the clerical staff of the DPW wins the competition because they had pizza. And we had a,
Next time.
We got candy.
well, you did, you guys had coffee and donuts, and that was good. And I gotta say this, everybody was terrific. They were all very open-minded and willing to consider. And of course, there were, you know, a lot of concerns, and not always 100%, you know, saying, oh, geez, this is a wonderful idea. But it was a lively discussion, and they were very helpful to make it a better proposal, a stronger proposal. And again, I appreciate the professionalism of all those employees. They were terrific.
Do you have anything you want to say, or should I ask my board for questions?
It's
or-
your meeting, so I think whatever protocol you want to go through is fine with us.
Why don't we start off with questions from the board?
I have a few.
Larry?
You talked about the clerical staff being reduced if you could put them together. Do you have the physical space to put the two of them together?
We took a look while I was down there the other day, and it would be a bit tight to get 6 people into Bob's office, to say the least. But we are dealing with a couple realities here. First reality is at some point in the not-distant future, there's a 50-50 chance we're going to have to take the entire staff in this building out of this building while we're doing rehab. Now, we don't know yet if that's going to be the case or not. We don't know if that's going to be the recommendation. We don't know if the voters are going to fund it, but there's a chance. So we may be forced by necessity to move people, and we're all going to be in a situation where, you know, we're going to be cramped wherever we end up. So we could end up doing it because of that reason. If we were to do the merger, then I would not recommend that we move the staffs immediately, because I don't think the space is adequate over at Bob's office. Maybe they could do some reconfiguring and make it adequate, or maybe we could wait some time, hope for a reduction by attrition, and then get the staff into that space a little more conveniently. I think 5 people can fit in there reasonably. 6, I don't know, that's going to be tough. But we could get 5 in there. 2 more workstations, I think, would fit reasonably. 3 would be tough.
The only reason I was asking is, again, and I'm not trying to nitpick the actual savings, but if the savings are tied in the clerical of putting them together and it takes 6 months to make that happen, then that changes that. But again, it's not a material number.
I would say honestly, Larry, that the clerical savings I would represent to you should not be considered a feature of this year's budget,
Okay.
but rather next year's.
Okay, all right.
We're gonna need time to put that into
Okay.
effect.
And I know I went through a lot of questions with you, just a couple of others. Can you share for the public, today we have a water and sewer person who has all the technical skills of making sure that our water meets its standards and the sewer and everything else. So talk a little bit about how a DPW head will have the technical skills to oversee the important aspects of water and sewer, along with parks and recreation and roads.
We talked a bit today about the licensing requirements that somebody has to have, and Leo can speak to you with far greater specificity than I can. But I think what we're thinking is that the director is a manager, pure and simple manager. Now, they need to have some knowledge about road paving, they need to have some knowledge about drainage, they need knowledge about sewerage, they need to have knowledge about water, but they don't necessarily themselves personally have to possess the licenses that are required to run all those systems. So they don't necessarily need to be a PE. They don't necessarily need to have a Massachusetts license for distribution, water distribution, or for water treatment. They need to have working for them those people, and we have them, and they need, ideally, you'd like a director who has one or more of those components. But here's the reality, and we're finding this out as we tried initially after advertising twice to replace Leo. You've got an asset in Leo which is of tremendous value. I know we always take our employees, and especially our long-term people, for granted. Well, Leo's a guy who possesses those licenses, and he has a PE, and he's got 30 years' experience. We're paying him about $100,000, just a little bit over. So we advertise about that, thinking we could get somebody like him, and sad to say, we couldn't get close. If you want to replace Leo in today's marketplace, and I don't want to embarrass him, but that's a $130,000 employee sitting over there, not including fringe benefits. That's the real world. Now, I've computed these savings on the basis of 100, but if I plugged in Leo's real cost, if we were going to actually try to replace him, bump these savings up 20 or 30,000 at least. So, the reality is we probably can't afford to replace Leo with all his skills and talents, licenses, and long-term. So what we're looking at is having a director who's more of a generalist than a specialist, but who has working for him or her specialists in those selected areas. We've already got the specialists. I mean, we've got them, so that's a good thing. Now, if we find somebody who has those capabilities, then that would be great. And as I've said before, Bob Swanson is a very capable superintendent. This is a new position, and so the charter requires that there be an application process. Bob would be an applicant, I would hope. He's well qualified, and he might end up being the person. And he has a PE, so he has one of those critical components. But it's not a given that anyone gets this job. This is an open competition. That's what the charter requires, and I would do no less for you. So can you end up with a person in the director job who has all those licenses and skills? I doubt it. You're not going to get a PE and somebody with all those licenses for a number that we're going to want to pay, I don't think. But you can have a very good manager who might have one or more of those and will certainly be a generalist and be a DPW director with great years of experience. That's the norm in the public sector.
And Leo, do you have any disagreement with that at all?
The only situation we had, and I discussed it this afternoon, is that the way this present structure is, like with the elimination of a superintendent, and you're gonna have a director up there, there is not a manager or qualified, responsible person in charge of the subgroup of the water department. Now, that whether that means you bring in somebody or you upgrade an existing position to have that responsibility. In other words, you need somebody that can administratively do a lot of what I do that he doesn't normally do. And a guy that's not doing that is going to want more money for it. And then the other guys would do the other work. So I think there's a void we discussed in there in the water structure that needs to be addressed.
Okay.
by some mechanism. And that would ultimately affect the savings. But there is a level of responsibility, because if you look at some of the other departments, like in Mansfield or Easton, they've got a DPW director, but they have a superintendent or a manager in the water, and they have the substructure.
Right.
So in this thing, there is a void in there of some nature that needs to be filled.
Okay, and I guess
What the cost for that would be, I don't know, but that's a consideration.
my concern when you look at the savings is less on whether the savings are 280 or 240 or 260. My concern is to make sure that we have the right oversight. You know, water is very critical. And we need to make sure that we've got the right oversight and the right person managing the day-to-day kind of a thing. And so, as long as that's, worked into the program, that's important to me.
The detail, it's gotta get worked.
It's got to get worked out, okay.
And I certainly agree with what Leo said.
Right, okay. Just two other quick things. One, I want to acknowledge that I received an anonymous letter in the mail from either someone from the water department, the highway department, the sewer department, or I guess from the town of Foxborough. I have talked to the town manager about it. He reviewed that today, so I just want the person to know that it was brought up. They had a meeting, they discussed it, they went through all of it. I'm not going to go through it tonight, but just wanted them to know that. And then the last thing, I do think it's important to recognize that all of you that were working together were looking at how do you, in a tough budget timeframe, reduce costs without necessarily laying someone off. And trying to take advantage of a retirement or a future retirement is important. When we're looking at the kind of deficit we're looking at, we have to seize every moment. And we may end up laying people off at some point, but it's important to be able to take advantage of the opportunities, and it looks like there are some now, so I congratulate all of you for that. That's all, Linda.
Well,
Oh, sure. Just some clarification things. When you were talking about the ratio of supervisors to employees, you had mentioned a 4-to-1 ratio. And I was just looking at, I thought it was more like 6-to-1, so I didn't understand something, obviously.
Yeah, I never do math in public. Let's ask a CFO. Randy, what would
Why I misunderstood.
29 divided by 6 be?
Oh, wait a minute.
Yes, that sounds like 5.
5.
Yeah, okay, good.
Okay, so, all
I can
right,
do that.
close enough.
I didn't
Okay.
have to take my shoes off, for the record.
Very good. Question for you on the overtime in terms of the plowing. So you have the departments combined. How does that work? A manager says, you have to work overtime, or, pretty please, or, how would it change in the, new regime?
Well, I have to tell you, I'm not a pretty please kind of guy. So it's going to be, I'm going to tell the DPW director to give the glad tidings to his employees, and it's not going to be optional. It's going to be, they're going to plow snow. End of story. In most DPWs, it's not considered a voluntary thing. It's you're a public safety employee, and when, you have a public emergency, a hurricane, a snow emergency, whatever, you're directed to work, and you work, and that's that.
So, push comes to shove, overtime, or you're gone? Or
Report for
legally-
work, or find some place that allows you to report for work when you feel like it and not when we tell you to. That's what it means.
Okay, all right. Very good.
Sorry if that's, but that's,
Yeah, no, I just want to
it's
be
kinda
very
like-
clear.
It's kind of like me telling you guys, geez, I'd love to be with you on Tuesday night, but, I just want to be with the Bruins, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You tell me to be here, I'm here, and that's the way employees do it.
Okay, got it. In terms of potential savings from consulting fees, would that be both for the general fund on the town side, or would it also be for the water and sewer enterprise fund? And this is on the engineering.
The bulk of the savings here is actually in the water sewer fund, because that's just the way the money is structured right now.
Yep.
Now, not all of it, but it's a little better than, the water sewer fund saves a little more than half, a little more than 50%. Because remember, I'm roughly assuming 2/3 of the work of the new director and engineer is in highway, drainage, et cetera, and 1/3 is water sewer. And that's the way I would propose to fund it the first year. Now, we may find out functionally, and by the way, I think that's, all I did is I looked at the employees. I said 2/3 are in highway, 1/3 are in water sewer. Since management is a supervisory function, I said, looks like 2/3, 1/3. You got to kind of be arbitrary when you start this, and then after a year, you ask the director, okay, for the past year, where have you put your effort? You may end up finding it's more than 60, it's more like 60-40, could be 50-50, but at least initially, I figure 2/3, 1/3. What that means is that the savings is just the flip of that, 2/3 odd in water sewer, 1/3 odd in general fund. So,
Okay. And then, question for you. In your memo, you talked about possibly engaging a CPA for a study. Is that something you wanted to talk about now, or?
for some time, I think the water sewer department has been concerned that, and I think the commissioners in particular have been concerned that what we call indirect costs, meaning costs that we budget in the general fund side of the budget and bill them for, they want to be sure that those things are done on as absolutely an accurate basis as you can. Now, some things are easy. What's the cost of pensions? Employees times the number. What's the cost of OPEB? Employees times, we can have our actuary break that out. But when you get to things like how much of employees' time over here is spent on water sewer functions, that's a lot harder thing to do. You got to keep records. So what I've suggested is to alleviate everyone's concerns and to make everyone feel good about whatever it is that the number is. We hire an independent outside auditor who, you actually have to do two things to get to this number. You have to do a rate analysis because you've got to figure all the cost components, and then you can break out all these separate components. So, and I don't think we've had a rate analysis for a long, long time, so that's a good thing to do anyways. So that's what I've suggested, an outside consultant. So, and it's people who specialize in this. They tend to be CPA folks. And their fees are not excessive, $20,000, $25,000 to do this kind of an analysis. And when they present their report, because, it's not me or Randy on our side, and obviously we'd love to see more transferred to the general fund, and it's not Leo doing the analysis, it's an independent outsider. So when it's all done, everybody has some confidence that it's been done objectively and the number is right.
Got it. Okay. That's all I have, other than great work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a couple of questions. Great job, Kevin,
Thank you.
and everyone else who worked on it. Going through the original memo and the description of the town engineering position, just wanted to throw out if you had considered looking at other towns, like I see Mansfield, for example, has 3 engineers on their staff, looking at an opportunity there to have some sharing with them.
That's a good idea.
In
That's
the
a great
same way
idea.
that we're looking at Plainville to offer them some help. And I think I'd mentioned once before, this had come up, that there are towns out there, I believe it was Franklin, who had said that they were willing to share their GIS. Technically, I don't know how that works, but just looking at from a technology standpoint, if we don't have a GIS system, do we have a GIS system?
We do, but it's
We don't have-
inadequate. I'm not sure
right.
if you received the memo that I sent back in response to Mr. Hawking's letter, kind of articulating where we stand with it. There are many different options to create a GIS. It's very easy to go out and pick a solution because there are plenty of solutions, but it's more important to actually have all of the end users, and there are 9 departments in the town that would use it to define their requirements, so that when we wind up with something, that all 9 departments can end up feeding off of it, rather than something that serves just 1 or 2 departments' primary needs. So that would be my suggestion.
Given the technology, is it reasonable to even consider sharing that type of technology with another town?
Again, I think we should avoid doing is jumping to solutions. We can jump to many different solutions that are out there. I think what's important is to define what do the 9 different departments in Foxborough, what are their needs? And since we've been so deficient for so long without proper GIS, I think many of the departments don't even know, or might not even know what they might use it for. So I think there's some education that's required. That's why I'm advocating for an end user project champion, whether it be the engineer or somebody else, to drive that initiative to bring all 9 departments together so they can say, this is what we're looking for, and then look at the solutions. And maybe there is a nice match out there where we can share, or maybe there's something that's, you know, relatively low cost for us to do, you know, on our own.
Thanks. Okay, my next comment really had to do just with the concept of consolidation. You know, in other industries, certainly successful models out there, and your model certainly mirrors them. I find it interesting from a management ratio standpoint. The ratio of 5 to 1 strikes me as really nice compared
is.
to other industries, and so.
It's terrific. I have to be complimentary to both departments, both divisions, and for that matter, police and fire. I mean, 5 to 1's a pretty lean manager to employee ratio. That's pretty good. In fact, I don't know off the top of my head anybody else who has that.
I think I was viewing it as perhaps another opportunity for consolidation, even at that level, that perhaps 6 to 1.
Sure.
Eventually, you know, just throwing that out there. I think communication, when you're doing this type of thing, is so important, and, you know, great job in taking the time to communicate with the employees of the departments.
Well, I
It goes
honestly,
a long way. This is a very difficult process for people to go through.
thank you for saying it. I honestly have to give Leo and Bob the credit for that, because I was kind of numbly focused on getting all this done and digging deeply into the research and the numbers and things, and didn't make note of that until they said, Kev, you really need to come talk to folks. So I thank them both for that. They made that call.
It's very
Good for them.
important for this to work. Also in consolidations, typically you look to take some of your savings and invest it in technology to make that process work better for the remaining employees. So, you know, what you had mentioned about, for example, the telephone system being in such terrible shape, this might be an opportunity to
I think
address
we
that at the
already,
same
I think our
time.
system will already do it. We just have to take advantage of what we already own. And I'm not gonna say our telephone system is robust technology, but I think it has some capabilities we're not yet using, and that's one of them. And as far as the pavement management system, I think we own that too, right, Bob? We just lack the time to get the inventorying done?
Well, it's really something that needs to be created.
Right.
Whether we do it, I mean, most of these companies, these engineering companies that do it, they've all created their own, I don't know if you'd call it proprietary, but they've really written the software themselves around in an Excel spreadsheet type of thing. So those are the ones that are available. We would have to come up with our own, and we can actually use part of the inventory that Mass Highway has just for our length of roadway and segment stuff, because they have theirs on Excel already, but theirs just deals with the physical size of it, not the condition of anything. So we could maybe use that and add on to that. So from that standpoint, it's partially done.
And just my last comment was, had to do, really speaks to Larry's comment about questioning about the space for the clerical staff. And again, at this time, you know, going through that whole redesign, renovation idea process, taking that into consideration, perhaps if there is this consolidation of that staff at Bob's facility, certainly that frees up some space in this facility, and perhaps some dollars can be spent to renovate, as part of that whole project, the facility for staff who might be relocated to a different space. So, that was it. Thank you.
I'll try not to be repetitive, but I share the same thoughts. I thought the presentation was very educational and very thorough, and thank you. And I thank everyone for coming. I know people here have a vested interest, the selectmen, the water and sewer commissioners. from my particular standpoint, I am a professional engineer, as you know, and I deal with towns with DPW. I've been doing it for a while. And I've worked with towns that do not possess a DPW. And I consult to them, and I submit applications to them as well. And I did check your numbers, and I did check the towns that are around, and you know, the internet's a wonderful thing. You can see, you know, the populations and the number of employees. But it also shows in the last 4 or 5 years, the towns that have considered doing a DPW. You can look on the blogs and you can look at why they're looking to do it, the towns that were successful to implement it and the towns that weren't. And overwhelmingly, it's, in my opinion, it's the way to go. There's efficiency, there's accountability, there's streamlining the process. And I support it. What I don't know is some of the questions. I think it'll start working out when we look at the process. We've got an elected board here. We've got an elected board with the water and sewer. We don't have representation for the highway on that elected capacity. So how do we meld it all together? And as a voter who voted in for the water and sewer, who works through an enterprise fund, how does that transfer over to the highway? And I'm sure those are things that we're going to have to figure out over a 1 or 2 year period. I look at this as something, if you can move ahead 4 or 5 years and look back, I think it's going to take that long to get everyone together to work out the logistics of the space. And but looking back, I don't think it's something that we're going to regret doing. But the DPW is specific to the town. I know there's some people that have approached me that they're apprehensive. I don't know if those fears have gone away if you've spoke to them. But if we can understand what the negative side is with respect to Foxborough, you know, address it early on before we go too far. And I don't know if this is the forum to hear that, or if it comes from the commission, but to vet through that process. But I like what I saw, and I think the numbers that you presented are what you said. I think they're in the middle. Some are a little conservative, some maybe a little ambitious, but you know, the pluses and minuses are I think right on target.
Phil, you wanna?
Sure. I'll start off. You don't mind, do you?
No.
You know, I thank Kevin for putting this together. I think it's, Kevin had asked me, I think it was over a month ago, to come in and sit down with him and talk about it, talk about the concept. I like the idea of someone with a fresh perspective coming into town to look at it. I've been on the board for 12 years. I have a perspective of the accomplishments of the boards and the challenges. Leo came on shortly after I was elected to the board. So I appreciate the challenges that him and his department face on a daily basis. I think what gets lost in this, we talk a lot about the highway and the challenges, but what gets lost in this is that the water and sewer employees have unique qualifications and unique requirements for that job. And we talk about the 4 or 5 or 10 snowstorms a year, but Leo's in his department's job is 7 by 24 by 365. It touches every house in this community, the quality of the water. So I think it's really critical that we don't de-emphasize that by saying, you know, just kind of mitigate their role in this whole process. So I would have liked to seen a little more talk about the uniqueness of the operation, because that is one of the concerns I have relating to a lesser value out of our water and sewer department, mitigating their effect. The concern is I did go out and look at the other communities. All those other communities that I looked at were Mansfield and Easton, and they have operations managers in that second tier. I'm concerned that in doing this analysis, we really should look at, because if we have someone now who's a working supervisor or a supervisor in either department, they're going to have to become an operations manager or get a bump up for more daily operations. I think that should be reflected in the analysis, because that is going to affect some of the numbers. So I think, without going into too much detail, I think there are some uniqueness and there are certifications for distribution and treatment on the water and sewer side that have to be taken into account. I guess boil it down is water and sewer employees can go over to the highway and do work, but highway cannot go over the water and sewer and do work. So I think that's a critical thing for the public to understand, of the importance of that role. The other thing is talking about the hands-on. I really am concerned with the 2/3 ratio. I really think that water and sewer is going to need somebody really hands-on. I don't know if somebody on the staff can really hand that day-to-day operation of seeing what Leo's done. So I think there's some more analysis that, you may have the answer, Kevin, but, or Leo may have that answer, but I think that's definitely going to need some more analysis. And the last thing, because a lot of it, you put the importance on the road work. I think it's important to understand that, whether Cross Street was done or not, whether that pipe was due to be repaired. Also, if a pipe broke on Cross Street, you would not tear up all of Cross Street, you would just repair the break or that section that has the problem. And even putting in a whole new pipe, that could break in a year. So I understand, I just don't want us to put too much emphasis on that example, because without going into too much detail, I have a long list of success stories of the cooperation. And I really feel the root of all that is, I haven't heard it, and I'm assuming, we really don't have a 5-year road maintenance plan. So that is causing that coordination issue. It's not that Leo and Bob don't talk to each other, it's just there's no master plan that they can work off of. So that was all I had.
Okay. Well, again, I'd echo a lot of the same comments. I appreciate you putting it together, Kevin. I'm glad somebody came in and said this, because this is an idea whose time, at least for discussion, is certainly due, if not well overdue. And we've kicked it around even on our own board that, maybe something along this line should be looked at and discussed. It's a little difficult, I think, has been a little difficult for us to figure out how to suggest that. So it's nice when somebody else comes in and is the lightning rod, if I could express it that way. I think there are a couple of things that I would point out here, or from my perspective. First off, I guess if we just play the numbers, and again, I don't like to do math in public, but we're replacing Leo and Bob with a DPW director and an engineer. And I was somewhat dismayed to hear you use the term sideshow or sidebar, okay? Because to me, that engineer is key to this process, okay? And so we'll replace 2 guys with 2 guys. Now, I know that Leo struggles to get all the work done, filling out reports and so forth, and I think that's part of what you alluded to with respect to the question to Leo.
Right.
And I think it's part of what Phil was referring to. I think we're all afraid there's a big gap between what we see Leo doing and a DPW director who will be a little further removed.
Right.
And the rest of the guys in our department. So we're afraid there may be kind of a big gap there, and it may need to get filled by this manager that Leo's talking about. Okay. But if I look at it from the perspective of replacing 2 guys with 2 guys, and oh, by the way, one of the guys that we hire, this professional engineer, is going to now prepare an infrastructure maintenance plan that doesn't exist today, and he's going to take on GIS, and we're going to give sell 15 hours a week of his time to Plainville or somebody else. We're going to have less manpower available just on those 2 guys than we have now. And I can only assume that Bob Swanson, for the people who see him at work, realize he's as busy as I believe that Leo is. So I think that, when it comes to the savings that we see here, I mean, the old expression would be, color me a skeptic. I'm a little skeptical of the savings. However, if I back away from that, I think this is a plan we should be looking at. I have believed for a long time and intimated for a while and gotten more strong in my belief as time has gone on, because some of us have been on the Water and Sewer Commission for quite a few years, that in fact we need more engineering support. I think Leo needs engineering support. He gets tied up with the reports to the state. I mean, the state dictates our life with respect to water quality, consumer confidence reports, statistical reports, leak detection, it goes on, and all the lab tests, it goes on and on and on. When you go into the office, and if Leo happens to be there, he's working on some report. When we say, gee, we need you to do this, Leo, it's like, well, let's put it in the queue. Okay. And yes, he gets to it. But it's certainly not in what we might as a board think is a nice, timely way. I believe he needs more support. I was delighted to see an engineer on the ad. but I'm not sure they're gonna sell away much of his time. And oh, by the way, have him help out the planning department and do road inspections and all those other things, and leave us where we are. I believe we can do a better job. I believe we're gonna have to add some positions back in and chew up some of those savings. Now, I'm not trying to blow away your story, because I support the idea, okay? And I think a lot of the questions we had tonight are, how do we implement it? Can we implement, where do we put the people as we're moving around? Where do we eventually situate the people? You know, I think those are questions of how. And I think there are a lot of questions of how that we need to resolve, not if we should do it. I believe the if part is answered already. Yes, we should do this. I think the time has come. I think you've raised the issue. I think if we turn it down now, we'll never go back to it, not in any reasonable time. I think it's time to seize the day and go do this. I think there's a lot of detail to be worked out, and as they say, the devil's in the details. The other thing there, I think that we need to be not too cavalier about, I think we all need to realize, and I think it's something you alluded to in a little comment I saw in the newspaper. The folks involved here, that, you know, it's great for us as managers to sit here and say, we should do this, and we're gonna do this, this, and this, and gee, this is the nicest structure and we're happy with it. You know, we're fooling around with people's lives. There are people in water and sewer who chose to go there, and I don't know this for a fact, but I suspect perhaps because they didn't have to plow snow, because they physically don't feel able to do it, and so on. There may be issues on the highway tree and park side. People don't want to be in water because they don't feel they want to take that work on. I think there are issues of who has a right to what job that we need to look at and be sensitive to. We aren't just going to give the new DPU director a bunch of new employees alone. He's going to get a lot of new work with it. There's still going to be things that need to be done down at Witch Pond Treatment Plant while we're trying to plow roads. All those guys in the department don't come available. So I believe there's probably room in a plan that puts it all together to make this all work. But I believe that we need to be sensitive to the needs and desires of our employees as we do that. And I'm not saying grandfather anything yet. I don't want to use that term, so I'll specifically disavow it. But I think we need to be sensitive to those issues. We're their employers, and I think we need to treat our employees well. And I think that's a thing we need to keep in mind as we hopefully go ahead with this program. But thank you very much, Kevin. I think it's a generally good plan. We need to go ahead with it.
Did I speak?
Oh.
Bill stole my thunder. And, DP does work. They are around. It takes adjustment. It takes a period of adjustment for people to change a mindset. You're dealing with 33 to 35 people and their mindsets, and get them reoriented to a new structure, a new means of operation. And it takes time for people to adjust. And you're dealing with a department that's been around for 110 years, doing good service to the town, dedicated people with good management. Now you're kind of muddling that up a little bit with a new structure. So there is a unit of pride with a company that's been around, like with the fire department. The company's been here for X number of years. They've done good work, and they deserve the credit for it. But they need a period of adjustment if it's going to happen. They need to get trained, retrained in new techniques. Like we're talking about the snowplowing aspects or sanding. And likewise, if the highway comes over and helps with hydrants, there may be some training there. But there's a period of adjustment. It can't happen overnight. It's going to take time, and it's going to take work to develop the structure and how it's going to work. And that's what I have to say.
Bill, yeah, that was it. It's all about the folks that have, been working for the town, whatever capacity it is, whether it's on the highway or whether it's water and sewer. And I think that, as I said before, I applaud you for going out and speaking to them, because I think that's where you're gonna get a lot of these answers that you brought up. When you start digging down into the details of how this is gonna work and why it's gonna work and how we wanna see it. those questions can be answered from those employees, I believe. And I think that I've always been willing to get a group together to help with that. And I think that this is one of those times when maybe you need some assistance from not just Bob and Leo and Randy, but some of the guys that are out there that have the expertise in the water hydrant or the snowplow itself, and, you know, do's and don'ts and how it would work, and personalities. You know, you don't want to step on anybody, and you want everybody to feel comfortable enough to stand up and say, this is how we've done it. I'm willing to listen to something new, but, you know, here's the pros and here's the cons. So I would, I'm not going to tell you how to do your job, but I would recommend, that you kind of form a subgroup that could meet on some of these things that we've kind of listed out. And maybe that's what we could do, is list out some of the things on details that, we'd like to see, some answers for, so that maybe you can't come up with right away, or you folks, but, that's my concern. And another thing is, we're not, maybe this board is no longer gonna be, the road commissioners anymore. Oh, no. And it's part of the job that we do that necessarily, maybe it shouldn't be in our hands anyways. We're always asking Bob for, like, well, what do you think about a sign, the Turtle Crescent signs, or the, things like that. It's change, and it's, my little town of Foxborough is all of a sudden, I just feel a little different about the whole thing. But again, it's the workers that I'm concerned about. And I know, because of the way that you handled this from the get-go, that their comments and suggestions are more than welcome to you. And I applaud you for that, because a lot of managers wouldn't go that far. And I'm grateful to you for that.
Linda, just to follow up on that and Bill's comment, what I sensed we were doing tonight was not approving a structure or anything else, but simply giving the direction to take it to the next level, to flush out, the supervisory roles, the space roles. If we're looking at, this is December, the fiscal year begins in July, by talking about it now, it really gives us the time to put a plan together that incorporates the employees' views, the manager's views, take advantage of Leo before he retires, working through and be able to take it to that next level. So, at least from what I hear generally around the table, there seems to be support to take this to the next level, to flush out the details. Nobody's arguing whether it's, $285,423.12 in savings or not. And I think that there's not even been an argument that the whole thing has to be driven by savings. It's, if you can improve the operational efficiency, if you can improve the service to the town, and you can at the same time reduce some cost, whether it's $10 or $5, it's reduced cost. So there's lots of different elements that go into it. The people play an important part. And so I just hope that what will come out of tonight is the direction of both boards to ask the staff to take this to the next level and flush out the execution. How would we execute it? What are some of the things we haven't thought about yet? Supervisory roles, those other kinds of things. And then come back at some time in the next, 60 days with, here's what it really looks like if we're going to go to take it forward, and these are some of the things we need to think about, so that we have enough time before we go into the final for the town meeting, that we've all pretty much aligned and we're pretty much on board with the execution plan and what the cost and the savings are going to be, and how much of those savings get executed in 1 year versus over into the second year, and that kind of a thing.
Just wanted to say a couple of things in reaction with some of what's been said. First of all, I couldn't agree more. Appreciate what Bill said about making sure that we work with the employees to recognize the fact that we've got an absolutely terrific bunch of employees in both divisions. There's a lot of pride there, and it was kind of fun talking to the men and women in both, because the expressions of pride in both the highway, tree and park, water and sewer, was quite strong and quite vociferous. And of course, you know, we're the best, no, we're the best. And that's a great thing, because you like seeing that kind of a spree. Because when you have employees that are have good morale, and feel good about what they do, and feel that they're the best compared to anyone else, then that's something you can build on as a manager, and you can really make even better things happen than what are already happening. And what's already happening is pretty darn good, no doubt about that. One cautionary note, I certainly agree that there's still some fuzzy spots in this, no doubt about that. And I just want to remind everybody that what is driving this concept, if it were not for the budget that we're going into and the fact that we have got a we got a couple $2 million gap that we've got to close, I probably wouldn't be sitting here saying to you, you know, let's look at something like this. I'd probably be saying to the Water Sewer Commissioners, you guys are going to have to pony up more money to get somebody at Leo's caliber, if that's the kind of level of experience and skill that you want. We need to keep our highway superintendent. And oh, by the way, I think we should add an engineer, a new person. As much as I'd love to say that to you, we're just not in that position. So what's driving this whole proposal is that we have to do more with less. Of necessity, that is going to mean that some of what Leo used to do probably won't be able to get done. Some of what Bob used to do probably won't be able to get done. What we're looking to figure out is how to take the work that two very energetic, very hard work, and very talented people were doing and replace them with a different structure. And admittedly, two full-time guys being replaced by two full-time guys, but one of those two full-time guys, director and engineer, is going to be spending some time in another town. So that's a diminution, you know, of effort. And we're expecting that other job to do some things that we don't currently do. So there's a real shifting, and there's somewhere along the line, as Bill says, you know, 2 + 2 still equals 4. It's not going to equal 5 just because we decide it's going to. So there's definitely going to be some stuff lost. The challenge is to figure out what can we afford to lose and still deliver a quality product. And that's the kind of details that you're talking about here. And I look forward to working out those, and I certainly agree, there's nobody more able to figure that out than the employees that we employ, you know, partnering with them to figure that out. But again, a couple of cautionary notes on that note. There are decisions that need to get made. And the first decision, as Larry correctly points out, is does this concept have your blessing? Now, I don't want to sit down with all these employees and do 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, or 100 hours of work, come back here and be any place except having you say, great, you got all the details worked out, good, we're with you. I don't want to come back here in 2 months and hear, well, gee, we need more work done. Because frankly, we're out of time already. I've got to give you a budget in 35 days. And I've got to put this concept in that budget or not. Now, there's a lot of numbers that have got to move to put this concept into that budget. And I got to know, am I doing that or am I not doing that? And there's no, you know, it may not be fish or cut bait time tonight, but it is going to be fish or cut bait time real soon. Now, I can propose a budget to you folks, and I can write this up as if you said okay. And I don't expect you to vote tonight. That would be an unreasonable request, and I'm not asking you to do that. I am saying I don't think we have the luxury of waiting a month or two to find out if you really bless this thing or not. And albeit, I'm going to be honest with you right now. Some of the details are not going to be worked out at the time you're going to have to say yes or no. Because the key person who's going to work out a lot of these details is going to be that new DPW director. That person is going to get handed this and he's going to be told, you're going to have to tell us how some of these questions are going to get answered. Now, the happy circumstance is Leo was graciously said he'll hang around if nothing else, and on a part-time basis, he'll postpone all the fishing and golfing and be around here for us, and that's very gracious, so we'll have a good asset. And the other thing is, this proposal can't go into effect really until July 1, because the funding that creates this is not currently in place. We've got to move money around in order to facilitate this. And we can't assume that the voters at town meeting are gonna say, okay, so we can't, if you voted in 30 days, yep, we're here, and you guys voted in 30 days, yep, we're here, we bless the concept, do it. We still have to ask the voters' permission in the form of approving the funding. It's not a vote to approve the structure, it's a vote to approve the funding. Because we're not, if it goes forward, we're not going to propose a water sewer superintendent and a highway superintendent. We're gonna propose something very different with completely set up, different salaries. I'm also gonna cut engineering budgets, and as I've said, we can't do that. We can't get by without that money unless we have that engineer. So there's some real decisions that are gonna have to get made. In the not-distant future, I will guess within 30 to 60 days, you're gonna be asked to approve an IMA, an intermunicipal agreement with the town of Plainville. And it's gonna require us to say, we will provide you the following, and Plainville will pay the following price. So I just I do not want to leave you with the impression that there are not gonna be real decisions that are gonna have to get made real soon for this to be able to be executed, or not. So, yeah, I will do that work. I'd love to hear the two boards say,
Well,
yeah,
for
go forward, or
For
something.
clarification,
Yeah.
and I think it's good to discuss, because I want both boards sitting at the table. What was outlined in your document, in our previous discussions, were, if this got the blessing, you would go, or we would go, Board of Water and Sewer and you would go to the personnel wage to create the director position.
Exactly, yep.
And the Board of Water and Sewer and you would hire the DPW director.
Yep.
Okay. So I just want to make sure, just for
And
our
that-
discussions.
Thanks for reminding me of that, Phil. That's a key thing that I've offered to the Water Sewer Commission as a sign of good faith, that this is really a partnership. And that this new DPW director, we'd have a group of people that would hire that, and all three commissioners would sit on that committee and have a vote. And we would work it by democratic consensus and, do that appointment. And as part of this, we may need to look at taking some of these savings and using it to invest in the middle management staff to beef that up. And all that's certainly understandable and probably good ideas as we're thinking about the refinements of this. But I do, need to have some clarity, because there's a lot of work to do, and I don't frankly want to do it.
So I would move on the Board of Selectmen that we direct the town manager and the Water and Sewer Commissioners to flush out the details and take this to the next level with the understanding that we would be ready to approve it at that time. Is that strong enough for you, or?
That's stronger than I'd hoped, and I didn't expect you to do it tonight, but that's great.
I'll second that with just discussion. So, I came in here loving this idea, and I still do. Some of the comments these gentlemen had did give me a little bit of pause. I think they're good points they make. The primary one that I'd love to hear a little bit fleshed out, the next iteration is, so we have a bunch of managers now who report to Leo. The new guy, would he be used to a Department of Public Works director to having, 6 direct reports? Is that typical? So I guess the answer lies in, what do other communities do? Does, the Mansfield DPW director, is he used to 6 reports from the Board of Water and Sewer, or is there someone in between? Because I think you're suggesting possibly there might be need to have someone in between,
If you
right?
go on the Mansfield site, there is a director, and then there's operational managers for the wastewater treatment plant, for the sewer, for the water, I think for their light plant.
Yeah.
Their site's pretty good about showing you the structure.
And that might just be as simple as someone currently in one of those 5 or 6 management positions steps up a little bit. I don't know, but I guess it, shouldn't be something that just kills the whole idea that, it's got to be something that can be worked out. I mean, this is not new technology, having a DPW director over both
The
departments.
critical thing on the water side is someone who's willing but also capable and
Correct.
certified.
Right.
You need that package. You can't, because with the distribution licenses, with these water treatment facilities we're bringing online, there's certain requirements by the state that you have to have staff
Yep,
at
understood.
this level.
Yep.
So
I guess
they
what
need to-
I think
Don't
Leo's,
minimize the reports he has to fill out to the state and the federal
I
government.
think what
too.
Leo's saying, and it's pretty clear mathematics, he's a 40 or 50-hour guy.
Right,
So we're gonna take a 40, 50-hour guy away,
right,
and we're gonna substitute, theoretically, 1/3 of a 40-hour guy, DPW director,
right.
1/3 of another 40-hour guy, engineer, doing doing what Leo used to be, and you do the math, 1/3 of 240s is less than 40 or 50. So I think what Leo's saying is, there's a gap there.
Yep, yep.
And what are we gonna do to provide the management,
Right.
that used to exist, that now will not exist? And that is a darn fine question.
It really is, and I guess just my point is, and I guess it's the obvious, I love being the master of the obvious, is it shouldn't be a great mystery. We, well, not we, you, do a little work and, we'll find out what other communities do, because it obviously works in other communities. We'll find out what they do, and there you go.
Yeah, and I think key to it too, Paul, is exactly what Linda was saying, which is you gotta sit down with the staff and you gotta say to them, okay, this is how much you're gonna have. You guys need to help us. And I think part of that might end up being taking a little bit of that savings, and I really think marginally it's not huge, and maybe beefing up one of those middle manager positions in Leo's department.
Great. So anyway, I'm past the if, it's just, some details, and I do think we should strike while the iron's hot. Including, if we do have a special town meeting, is it too ambitious to say some of these changes could be made for a special town meeting? Or in all cases, would it be prudent to wait for the annual town meeting?
You will never hear me say that if you'd like to get it done, can I get it done? I will never say no. So if you'd like this teed up in the next 30 days or 15 days or 60 days for a potential special, by goodness, we'll get it done.
I'm just wondering about what you think about the prudence of that. Is that, could that be a good idea, or is it just too much? Is that not a fair question to you?
I appreciate that you would ask it,
Yep,
but I feel very strongly, you guys set
okay.
the standards, you set the goals, you direct the way you want the priorities made. And if you say this is a priority, you want this figured out in the next 30 days or 15 days or whatever it is, it'll get done.
Okay, but so let me just respond from my view
Yeah,
on
I'm
Paul's
interested.
comment. This is a very busy time of year for highway, for water and sewer, for the finance director, for yourself. And I think if we're gonna try something this big and it doesn't work well, it's gonna be really hard to do the next project. So I would rather not rush to throw it in the next, 90 days. I would rather make sure that we have thought it out totally, so when it implements on July 1st, it is relatively seamless, it is a success, and the rest of the town looks at it and says, okay, we can handle change, and boy, and people seemed it worked out pretty well. Now, what are some of the other things? We talked last week about other communities and maybe looking at jobs and where we can partner together. Well, this is just a baby step in that respect, but it's also a step in getting our own departments to work together in a way they haven't. So I would be more for, let's work for July 1st and really get this flushed out properly, work it for the budget, work it for the operations, work it for the people, get wage and personnel board, everybody on board, and make sure that it's a success.
So I would agree with you so long as that timetable makes sense to, let's say, if Kevin came in and said, if we wait till July, we've missed the bus, but I don't think you're saying that, Kevin, right?
No.
No, okay, all right, then I agree with Larry.
Under discussion, just 2 quick points. The DPW issue, but then the issue of maybe potentially taking a staff and sharing it with another community. I don't want to underestimate that. We've been through that before. the logistics and the equipment and all that stuff. That's probably a piece that if people are uncomfortable with that or it doesn't work, that can leave or come back. I mean, this isn't all or nothing. That's a detail in your numbers.
Not sure I followed
The
you.
detail of having that PE go over to Plainville for X amount of hours.
Yep.
If we go forward with this DPW director, that's a detail that, if that doesn't happen, it still goes forward.
Yeah,
It's not integral to
I
your
don't see
plan.
that as fatal in any way. If Plainville, for whatever reason, decides they want to do something different,
Okay.
partner with another town, or go to a full-time replacement for their guy, it's a nice opportunity, but it's not in any way fatal to this. I'm frankly hoping, and I expressed the thought to Joe Fernandez today, that the experiment would work, it would work well, and we might be looking in 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years to full regionalization of both towns' DPWs. I'll be honest, that's where I'm thinking.
Yep, okay, very good. And the other one is, before we vote, and there's a lot of people here, some staff, if we could hear, I'd be more comfortable hearing the other side before we voted on it,
Sure.
if there's anything to be said.
There are folks out there that want to be heard tonight? Bob, of course. Come
Bob,
on
could you
up,
come up to the
Bob.
microphone though, so folks at home can hear you?
Bob Swanson, Highway Superintendent. I just want to say that I think Kevin did a great job, and he's brought up a very valid point. A few years ago, I think it was 2 years ago, we went to town meeting on it. I agreed with it then. I agree with what Leo says wholeheartedly, that you really need some expertise in the water department. I really don't know what would occur there right now if Leo just left, to be honest with you. I just don't know what would happen. I'm just not involved with it, but I think Leo's words were wise words, and I think you all heard them and definitely picked up on them, so I'm encouraged a lot by that, because I think they're very truthful. And other than that, that's about all I have to say, other than I really do think the snow plowing could be enhanced with using some of Leo's employees. It would definitely help us save some money. So that's all I have to say.
Thanks, Bob.
Thanks, Bob.
Anyone else? Hi there.
Mike Walker. I work with the Water Department. I just had a couple of questions, please, if I could. Some clarification. One thing, I do agree with Mr. Harrington. I think that needs more review. I think some of the data that was submitted to Mr. Pecos was raw. Should be reviewed further before this goes forward. It's not my place, per se. For the snow plowing dollars, I have some questions on that in regards to the dollars that was presented to Kevin was basically $20,000 to $30,000 in savings per season. The hours, the dollar amount is based on overtime at time and a half and double time after 4 o'clock. So my question, I guess, is if 7 water department employees hypothetically were to plow for the DPW after 4 o'clock at time and a half and double time, does that mean the 15 contractors are going to be cut back by 7? Is
Well-
one answer.
Yeah, I think the answer to the question is, for every water sewer guy that we can put in the seat of a truck plowing, it's one contractor we don't hire. Yes.
Who would track that?
I'm sorry?
Who would track the savings of contract or no contract? I don't.
Well,
Bob.
right now, I set it up and I hire the contractors that I think we need. And if we're gonna have more water and sewer people plowing, then there would be less contractors that I would need.
So there's 15 FTEs in the highway department. There's 12 usable pieces of equipment in the highway department,
No, there's more than that.
and 3 water department trucks would go to the highway department after 4 o'clock,
Well.
approximately, give or take.
Yeah,
So approximately 3 trucks.
Yes.
So if there's 3 trucks going to the highway department after 4 o'clock, I don't see the $20,000 to $30,000 savings. I see maybe a $9,000 or $10,000 savings. But anyway, that's small numbers.
Yeah.
But the 2 departments combined is $2 million approximately, water and DPW. So the savings, potential savings is maybe 1% of the total budget for this whole DPW thing to come to reality.
Well, his numbers were 250,000 on 2 million. Right.
All right, so I stand to be correct. All right,
okay.
so
But the snow plowing number is the 20. But if you look at his whole plan, it was the 250 to 280, was that what it was?
Snow plowing is a small part of that.
So, 12, 15%.
I mean, I understand the vision, there's no doubt about it. I mean, I'm a taxpayer too, so, I mean, I truly understand the vision. I just think that some of the data has been raw that was submitted,
Yeah.
and I think should be reviewed more thoroughly.
Right.
And I don't see how 8 water technicians, you're gonna pull 7 after 4 o'clock, they're gonna plow from 4 o'clock in the afternoon till 7:30 the next morning, and then run the treatment plant and the pump stations, and all the other 30 duties that are assigned, 7 days a week. I don't see, there's 15 FTEs in highway, there's 8 in the water. I don't see how, unless we have a true analysis of all job descriptions in all departments, total man-hours, physical, non-physical, whatever, I don't see how these numbers are gonna truly work in regards to snow plowing dollars for the 20 to 30,000. That's my point. I'm not saying it can't be done.
Right.
I'm saying it shouldn't be done, but I don't see those numbers per se right now, and the amount of bodies that are involved.
Right. And that's what we would expect to be worked out through this next phase.
I think that's one of the spin-offs, the good part of it is you get job descriptions. I mean, the other towns are doing it, the other towns are plowing and working both sides, so I think that's the effort moving forward that we would work to define and figure out.
When I was down meeting with the guys the other day, Mike addressed a lot of these, and I said frankly right away, Mike's a pretty smart guy, because you gotta look realistically at how many people can you spring loose, still maintain the plants, because the plants have to be inspected.
Right.
Every day, everything's gotta get done, you gotta plow the driveways there, so, he's quite right. You gotta, Bob and Leo have to sit down, and they've gotta figure out how many guys really can come over. The only thing we know for sure is that for every one guy that we can pull over, put in the seat of a truck and plow snow, it's one contractor we won't hire. So what we would do, and I can only do that if the Water Sewer Commissioners green light that. What we would do is we would track it through this winter, and we would say, okay, here's how, on this snowstorm, here's how many guys we could afford to bring over and still get the water work done, and here's what we saved. And we would just track that, right, and and we'd have really good, clean, clear data. But Mike, he's a smart guy. I mean, you're right. You can't assume 7 guys because you don't know that.
Again, for lack of knowledge, it's not my expertise per se, just from what I hear and gather, but I just think that you need a true analysis of every department's job description, their physical and non-physical hours. That means every single department in town. And then you need form committees from the bottom up to create ideas, to bring ideas forward, to present it to upper management so that every department can have all kinds of savings. I think there's a lot more different areas and avenues to look at to save money in addition to the 260K per se.
Right.
And I'm sure this is a stepping stone.
I want to give you some good news, Mike, because you spoke up. You're on the committee.
Chairman.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Anyone else out there would like to speak? Okay. So, is there any more discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
5-0, Pauline.
Do you guys
Okay.
want to share with us what your thoughts are?
I think this, well, Mike's not here, so
Right.
I just, myself personally, I think I talked about my concerns are kind of what Leo said and what Mike
Right.
said is my concerns is you can't just look at the numbers.
Right.
You gotta look at the efficiencies, but also you gotta look at the deficiencies, and those are my concerns with the water, and the sewer side. You can't afford to have, drop in quality
Right.
in that area. You may save some money, but, it's gonna hurt you in the long run.
And I think we agree with you on that, so,
So those are my concerns, so.
and we already heard Bill wants
That's
to
where I
go
was
forward.
going. I
Yeah.
think we should support.
The only thing I think is, not that I don't mind meeting with you on a weekly or daily basis.
Really?
Someone said earlier, so I won't steal the idea, but I would think like a subcommittee with like Jim, because Jim's got some experience with the engineering and the DPW and real-life experience. Bill's got an engineering background, and I think Bill, I'm volunteering Bill, but maybe these subcommittees, with Kevin and whoever, Kevin, and maybe Mike Walker, somebody or someone from the highway, to kind of go through these things and vet these questions, and instead of us coming and meeting constantly, because we're not gonna meet a deadline. And I don't mean to volunteer Bill or Jim, but I think those are, at least the start representing both boards.
I'd be more than happy, once we get some more of these details worked out, to invite Bill and Jim to a meeting and say, we've got some more details, I'd like to get you guys to react to it. If both parent boards are okay with that arrangement, we'd be happy to do it.
They can funnel back information without having to constantly.
Correct. Sure.
But that's just a
Great idea.
observation.
I like that idea better than a subcommittee, rather just being invited to meetings, because committees kill things. I mean, it's, no surer way to kill the idea than let's have a subcommittee.
Well, I'm gonna restate it again, that I think that subcommittees do work, so I'm gonna disagree with you on that. But I do think that it is important to utilize the town employees that we have and their experience. Many of them know this town better than some of us sitting on this board, I'm pretty sure. So, you already invited Mike, and he's gonna be the first one at the door, so.
Change management fails if you don't have the people involved in the change, so you're absolutely right, Linda.
I'm speaking from the little guy that has ideas for management in my company, so that's my idea. Well, I thank you guys for coming in tonight.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Once again, teaming up, it's a good idea, and it's great working with you.
Any of you want to go to our meeting, we're going down the hall.
Look at them all go.
Water served.
There's supposed to be, is there a Mark Levin here this evening yet?
Yes. Thank you.
I don't know, there's Mark Levin from Showcase is supposed to be here. If we could take a action item. Are you Mark Levin? Yes, I am. Mark, you're right on time. Okay, I was wondering if we can take this action item for the,
Change of manager.
for Showcase Live.
We got the query check back just today, so we
Yep.
want to give that to you.
Should Mark join us up here? Or?
Sure, come on up, Mark, I'm sorry, should have said. I just need your name and address for the record too, please.
Mark Levine. I reside at 97 Kevin's Way, Southeastern, 02375.
Great. Kevin, do you wanna?
The application is in order, the query check came back successfully, so there's no reason we would have not to recommend this to you.
Okay. Do you want to say anything, Mark, or tell us about? Does anybody have questions for Mark? I would entertain a motion then.
So I'd make a motion that we approve the request for change of manager for Showcase Live to Mark Levine.
Second.
Any other discussion?
Just a discussion, just to make sure that you're familiar with our approach to these kinds of issues and the oversight and making sure there's no problems. So we have been very serious with all of our establishments in the last 12 months. I just want to make sure, as a new manager coming in, that you're on notice that we look for these things and we look for violations and that we expect 100% compliance.
Yeah, I've gotten with Chief O'Leary.
Okay.
Past 3 meetings and made sure we have a detail on most shows. We do have private security too that we keep in there. We try to watch everything as close as possible.
Right.
I agree with that, all the same thought process on this one.
Okay.
Great.
Okay.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0, Pauline.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Mark.
you.
Thank you, Mark.
Have a nice evening.
You too.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you. And now we will have a discussion about our current liquor license regulations.
The board had asked that we give you the current regs, and I'm pretty sure you're probably not ready to have a 2-hour discussion on these tonight, but I think that the intent of the board was is you wanted to have this on the agenda this week as a catalyst for beginning the discussion and kind of figure out, how do you want to go forward on this? These are your regs. They're really not bad. They're a lot more comprehensive and a lot better thought out than frankly what a lot of communities have. But there is room for improvement here. And I think Lorraine had mentioned a willingness to work with the chief. And I think there was some hope that maybe another board member would have some time to look at other towns and sort of get a best practices sort of a consideration. If a couple of you can't do it, I talked to the chief today, he's happy to work with Lorraine. I'm just grateful that you're not asking me to do it, because it's a lot of work, and I just, this time of year, it's just bewildering to try to do it. So if board members are willing to do it, God bless you, that would be great.
From what I stayed and watched the meeting on Tuesday night, and were you interested in that, Jim? Was that something that?
I'm interested in it getting done.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I'm just,
Yep.
I can't commit to it, just because of my schedule and the other things that I'm doing.
Okay.
And other reasons, I don't have the time, and I don't want to say I can do it and then disappoint, so
Right.
I'm going to have to step back from this.
Yeah, I'm happy to join in if
Okay.
that's the desire of the board.
And Lorraine, you were interested, so why don't we,
A lawyer's perspective on this would be terrific to have.
Or a big drinker, one or the
Big-
other.
Yeah, I'm the lawyer,
Oh, we
yeah.
got it covered.
Yeah, he is a lawyer, yeah.
Yes.
I'm the big drinker.
I think of particular interest is the last page, because we've had sanctions for violations. We've had lots of dialogue around that, and I think that we set a tone at a meeting a few months ago that is different than what is written here. So I think that particularly that page is one that you should try to focus on as well.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
In the interest of helping the board, I don't want to say that we'll completely dodge the bullet here. So one thing I think we can do to help you, and we're happy to do it if you'd like, we can call ABCC, find out if they've got towns that they consider to have really good policies, and get copies of them for you. I don't know,
I know Ed has been collecting a number of them.
Ed,
I
Ed
thought he
O'Leary.
had- yeah.
oh, he's got a bunch already?
Yeah.
Oh, great,
Yeah.
good.
Also,
Super.
I'm sorry, we've had a consultant in a few times now to give training to.
For us, yeah.
For us and for the police, and,
Yeah.
I mean, I think he's got a treasure trove of really
Oh,
good
yeah.
examples as well.
Remember, I've got one for you that's about 80% written. I just need a little more time alone with it to get it done. That's a processing of violations, how to get them from the individual officer who sees an incident to the attention of the board. That's close to being done. As soon as I get that done, I'll shoot it to all of you, and especially to Paul and Lorraine.
Yeah, I was listening to that discussion, and my only comment would be, I'm not here to micromanage.
Understood.
That's,
This is a policy that has a systematic way to take all the minor stuff and not bury you with that, because that stuff happens all the time.
Right.
Only get to your attention the serious things that need action, but to have a systematic process so that we don't have a situation where individual officers are seeing a pattern of problems at an establishment, but because Officer A sees it, and Officer B sees it, and Officer C sees it, but not all three see it, nobody notices something is habitually happening. This is a way to get around that, and it's something of,
Well, there is a report that we get from the state that says, certain individuals, how many individuals, were
arrested,
supposedly.
where they last reported they were drinking and
Right.
that sort of thing. Yep.
Which is, as the chief had mentioned before, it's hard to say, I could say that I was at, Kevin's Pub when I was actually at Paul's.
Yeah,
Tavern,
this isn't like that. This is incidents that occur at licensed holding establishments that our officers personally see.
Okay,
And because individual officers are filing individual reports,
right,
there's no system in place to see if there's
Oh, okay.
something happening
Yep.
at a place. And then I've had it happen, and all of a sudden, there'll be an incident that's serious. They'll go into the computer, they'll look, and they'll say, my goodness, there were 9 incidents in the last 6 months.
yeah, if we could be proactive.
And we
that's-
didn't know because there's no process to vet that. That's what this will give you.
Okay.
And
Awesome.
there is one resident that came up to me that wanted to help, and I can share that name with you after, but he's involved in the insurance part of this as a private practice, that he might be able to give some insight or be task-oriented.
Thanks. I don't think we need a motion to establish anything, because you wouldn't be part of the committee, right?
That's great.
I know.
I like that. It's good.
Okay, so we're good on that. Thank you, Kevin. Discussion of the town warrant.
The issue here is whether or not the board wants to have the special town meeting without the main focus, which was the deal with the Patriots, which is moving along but won't be ready in time realistically to be considered before the May town meeting, because once we get it done, then there's going to be a lot of work to get other folks educated, and there's no way that can happen in 6, 7, or 8 weeks. So I have spoken to Dan Murphy, and we've agreed May is a lot smarter way to go. So now the question comes to the board. You know, do you want to put all this other stuff on, or knowing that if we wait till May, then, you know we've got at least a 2-night meeting. So I talked to the department heads about those articles and asked, was there anything pressing? And everybody agreed there's nothing pressing. By the same token, if it's the board desire to have a meeting, we're ready to go.
I would be opposed to the 2 nights, because it's hard enough to get them till midnight the first night and then to come back. So if it would be easier to have a special town meeting to clear all these issues, so that the annual town meeting would be easier, because if the budget could be contentious, and there could be lots of discussion on the budget, the situation with the water and sewer. So I'd like to have some good chunks of time there for the dialogue, and so I would support a special town meeting to deal with a lot of these kinds of issues.
I think I'd agree with that from a review, thinking with respect to the advisory committee. If you've got 15 people, if they can focus on this, get through it, and it lightens it up for the next one. And I think they've had this for a while. I don't know how active they've been, if they're still waiting, but have them go through these, vet it out, vote on it, and then be a little more concise when it comes to May with the other ones. So my preference would to have the special town meeting.
My preference would be, I think you make some good points. It might be better if we have 2. My interest is just cheapness. If it's going to be $4,000, do we really need to spend that?
But if you had to do it in 2 nights anyway, you'd still have the cost for the second
Yeah,
night.
no, I gotcha.
You avoid very little with 2 nights versus a special and a regular, because there's a slightly increased cost with the special, because you got to print a separate warrant. But
Right.
if you go put it on a regular, you're going to print all those articles, so it's going to make the warrant a little. It's minimus. It's de minimis.
Right,
And
okay.
I've sat through
That's a
town
legal
meetings
term, by the way, de minimis.
Thank you. Yes.
where they've had
I was
back-to-back
present
meetings.
for that class.
Sorry. It's hard enough to get someone to come for a special and then a regular in May, but try to get people to come back 2 nights in a row. Unless it's something very controversial, you're going to struggle the second night anyways.
I agree.
Well, that's what I was worried about to begin with, I know there's a lot of them, but is there anything in here that's gonna grab the public interest enough to attend? That's my.
I think that there are those that will go to a special town meeting because it's a special town meeting. And I think that while you may not end up with 357 people, I think you'll end up with enough people to do the business that needs to be done. Just my thoughts.
I'm in favor of it.
With the special.
What I would ask the board then, please, is we will now finalize this warrant for you, because there were a few things that were kind of still up in the air. We sort of put them aside. We'll finalize it, and I would ask the board to please review the warrant and specifically vote the articles in or out. You don't have to take positions on them. Just vote them in or out on the night of January 4th. I will have a recommendation for you from the staff for a date for the special. That's just our recommendation. That's really your call, but it'll be a date that we think we've got enough time to go through everything and
Do
get
we
the
meet
ad
on the
column
fourth?
up.
No, isn't it the
The
second and
11th,
fourth?
right?
The 11th we meet.
I'm sorry, the 11th.
Right.
And if you can finalize the warrant that night and set the date, we're in good shape.
Okay.
We're not meeting next week.
I'm gonna
We're gonna have a
have a
discussion.
proposal
I
for
think.
you on that,
Okay.
which hopefully you'll like.
Okay, you're gonna, I'm sorry, you're gonna finalize these, but there was one or two presented by the police that you needed more town council input. Has that been the process?
Well, he did it. It's really gonna be a matter of whether you wanna bite this much controversy off. Because a couple of these, I think they're great ideas, but they're gonna get you sued. No doubt about it. So the question is, do we wanna be the first in the state? That's the question. Because these are, a couple of these are things that are being discussed by the State Police Chiefs Association, and so Ed put them forward for you to take a look at. But they're controversial, so you gotta kinda look at them that way. And you might say, well, you know, we don't wanna do 3 of these, but we'll do 1. Or you might say, we're not doing any of these. It's up to you. It'll be here the
We
night.
can have Ed to speak to them.
Yes, Ed will be here that night, and I'll have town council here that night, too.
Okay.
Because I think you need them for that discussion.
All right. Okay, so, action items. The minutes from November 23rd. Does anybody have anything on that? And entertain a motion to approve?
Well, other than the Sue Thibodeau,
Oh.
that has to be changed on the meeting minutes. Pauline
So
on
do
the
you see
first
that,
paragraph.
Pauline?
On the first paragraph?
I thought Pauline got that.
Where it says 7:05,
Uh-huh.
halfway down, change the 16th to the 23rd for when the phone call came in.
Well, that has to be changed to the 23rd?
From the 16th to the 23rd.
Okay.
That's what,
Yeah. And those were for the minutes of the. So I'd entertain a motion as amended.
make a motion to amend the November 23rd with that one correction as amended.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Abstain?
Abstain as well.
Oh, that's right.
We weren't here.
It was just the 3 of us. That's why you were over there yawning. Okay, the next is the invoice for December 2010 retainer services.
Move to approve?
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
5-0 Tony. Next is a donation of $500 from the Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare to the Foxborough Historical Commission.
Move to accept with gratitude?
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
We did the Showcase Live. And the next is a request for 11 o'clock Sunday openings of the 3 stadium license establishments for Patriots 2011. This is because of,
I think it's just they want the extended hours so they
Okay.
can take advantage of the business opportunity, you know?
Yeah.
The chief is fine with it, so.
Just a question, what are the 3 licenses? I know it falls under Gillette Stadium, but are they 3 separate,
These are separate licenses,
3 separate
it-
places within the stadium?
yes.
Okay. Are they restaurants, are they bars? I just don't know.
Off the top of my head, I don't know. Well,
They serve food.
there's no bars there, they're all restaurants.
Right.
So I'm gonna assume,
True.
well,
Yep.
I don't wanna assume,
yeah,
but I'm sure it's the 3 restaurants that hold licenses over there.
Okay.
You already gave permission to one, this came up before, and you had asked that
We thought it
instead
all-
of voting them separately, we just put it on the renewal.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it turned out ABCC said we couldn't do a change of hours on a renewal. You had to vote them separately.
Okay.
So we had to bring them back to you. You were already gonna say, yep, okay.
Right.
So I apologize that I don't know which 3, because it was sort of just routine, so we threw it on.
I would move to approve the request for the 3 stadium alcohol license establishments on Patriots 2011 Sundays to open at 11 a.m.
I'll second that.
And discussion?
I would just say, even if it's, I don't know when they let people in for a 1 o'clock game, but if it's just simply, people going to get their 2 beers, I'm okay with that.
Because they're there long enough, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Now, here's the proposal, because you have a choice. There's one more action item that just came in today. I'll hand this around. And if you want to take this up under emergency conditions tonight, you can do that. But only if you're not going to have a meeting next week, which is what I wanted to propose to you, because that's the only agenda item that you would have to do, because that's a request for 2 AM closing for Waxy O'Connor's. And if you are of a mind to entertain that, then you'd either have to do it tonight, or you'd have to have a meeting next week to do it. So right now, we have no pressing business other than that for next week. And you've met 2 weeks in a row.
We've approved all the licenses, we've signed all the licenses.
God bless Sandy, with Chris's help, they managed to get it done. And if you'd seen this place the last couple of weeks, talk about pandemonium, they did a phenomenal job, just a phenomenal job.
They always do.
And Sandy with a broken foot
Right. Right.
is in there with her foot up on her desk doing licenses.
Well, if this would be okay to do this evening.
It is. I mean,
We just,
it wasn't
As far as-
posted, so you've got to take it under emergency conditions, but the nature
What
of the
is-
emergency
what
is,
is the nature?
if you don't have another meeting, and you're not required to, this would not be able to be acted upon prior to New Year's, which is what the request is for. So it meets the definition of emergency, no problem.
Is the chief giving any input on this, Chief O'Leary?
I talked to the chief about it, and his request is only that you do the standard 2-officer detail, because the presumption is you probably would have 300 or near that.
Right.
And he doesn't want to risk, saying one and then getting a big crowd and end up needing a second and not being able to find that person on New Year's Eve. We've got to get the person, that officer identified well in
And we
advance.
did that last week, we said they had to have
CBS, was it?
CBS scene.
So,
You've granted 3 others for 2 AMs, and they've all had the condition of 2 officers.
so ready for a motion or not yet?
A little more discussion. I have an issue with this one, only because I don't think it's an emergency that they're coming in so late. New Year's didn't change. It's been the first, as far as I know. They've had a lot of issues in the past. They're not here to present it, to talk about past issues or people at the door or police. And I think because of all that, I think they're taking it for granted. So I'm not going to, it would have been nice for somebody to be
Well,
here to present it.
I can react to that. Gordon had given me a call about this and asked for advice. And I had said, well, you need to get up to Sandy as soon as possible. He explained to me that he did come up to Sandy on Friday, but it was just as the girls were leaving the office. So he felt he couldn't get it in. He didn't realize we were meeting today. So, he said he could do it for next week. And I said, well, that's the problem. I wasn't sure because Kevin had mentioned that we may not need a meeting. So I spoke to him personally on the phone and asked him to get it up here as soon as he could.
We
and
did
he
take it
did-
in on Friday.
Okay.
But we could not tell him whether the board would take it up tonight or next week, because there was no way
Right.
to dialogue with you. It's a board decision, it's not something the
And he
chair
would
or I
have
could
come
have.
up tonight. He did ask me, he said, do you think it's worth me coming up? And I said, I don't know, I don't want to waste your time if we can't vote on it tomorrow night. And I said, my main concern would be, are you going to be able to keep that kitchen open going until later hours too and feed these folks? And he said, absolutely, he would keep the kitchen open until 1 o'clock.
Okay, and I appreciate that. I'm still not inclined, and I don't know the
It's
people
okay.
there. I don't know any of the, I just know the past and the history, and I just, let's take a year off from it, is my opinion on this.
Ready for
Yes,
a
I'm
motion?
ready.
Yeah, so
Sorry,
I'd make
sorry.
a motion that we approve the request, provided they have 2 detailed officers.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? 3 to 2.
And in that case, unless the board has any business that you want on next week, I don't have anything pressing. There's plenty of
Okay.
items, but there's
Yep.
nothing pressing.
So we will not meet
Meet.
until the 11th then.
Can I just ask, is it possible to change the 11th to the 4th? Does that work?
Doesn't work for me.
Doesn't- all right.
Okay.
Okay, so with that, I would, unless anyone has anything to say? Yes? Second.
George Leonard, 3 Aldrich Road. Kevin, earlier in the evening, with the Board of Water and Sewer, relative to Plainville, you expressed yourself one way, and then you expressed yourself another way. And what I mean by that
Usually I only
is-
do that when I'm talking to my wife, but you're talking outside.
Thank you, but do we or do we not have the available time to offer something to Plainville? Has Plainville come to us?
We have the time if the DPW director and the engineer are approved.
But
If
you
only
indicated a
one were
pressure being
approved.
put on by Plainville to get an answer.
I'm sorry?
You indicated a pressure being put on by Plainville to give you an answer.
No, the pressure isn't Plainville. It's not coming from those folks to get an answer. I'm asking the board to make a decision, because very soon, I've got to write a budget, and this is impacted by it, and Plainville might approach us any day formally and say, we'd like to know if you can do this or
I
not.
think it's a total non-issue, and it shouldn't have even been brought up.
Thank you. Anything else, folks? Kevin?
Executive session.
Oh, yeah, so I,
So, you want a motion?
yes.
I make a motion, we enter an executive session to discuss collective bargaining, personnel issues, and strategy for real property negotiations, to then exit thereafter to adjourn.
Sole purpose.
I'll second that.
Just a discussion?
Yeah.
Do we
discussion.
have any executive session minutes that we, I don't see that on there for approval, so are we current on our executive session minutes?
So,
Okay, all right. Thank you, same to you.
That's what I'd
there's
like
the
to say.
motion.
Merry Christmas, Foxborough.
hi, Jim.
The motion, then someone seconded it?
Jim
I
seconded.
seconded it, yeah.
Roll call.
Yes.
Call. Lorraine? Yes. Jim?
Yes.
Larry?
Yes.
And the chair, Linda, yes.
2 minutes.